Welcome to Coffee with Patty. I have a guest here that I'm really excited to talk to. And actually, originally, my daughter saw him on TikTok and said, "Mom, this guy is really good. Get a hold of him." So I did. And since I've been talking to him a little bit, I've read almost all of his book. It's fantastic. So I'm going to buy it for Christmas presents this year for everybody I know. So I want to introduce you, James Francis. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, the other name.
Reneer.
Reneer. James Francis Reneer. Welcome. Are you in Connecticut today?
I am in Connecticut today, thankfully, yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this.
You're welcome. You know, I'm so excited to talk about your story, and it really made me think. I've never been to Maine, Vermont, or Connecticut, but reading your book, it makes me want to go travel there and just see what it's like over there. Never been in
Oh,
that
that's
area.
great.
Also, reading your book, I feel like I know you. And it was such a brave, really awesome book for people to read. Everyone does get to know you. And so I told you the other day when I think I texted you, it's like after reading the first couple chapters of your book, I feel like there should be more women like your wife, Chris,
Mm,
and your sister, Monique,
yeah.
and more helpful facilities like Silver Hill Hospital, because that was a miracle that you got in there. It's a miracle you got in there in a bunch of different ways. But I'll let you tell a little bit of your story of how you want to get started and talk about your book.
Thanks so much for that. I wrote the book really to start a conversation for men and for people in relationship with men to help them understand a little bit more about perhaps some of the disconnect that exists. And the story is fairly straightforward. And the reason I wrote the book is to start this conversation, but in the way I wrote the book so that people would understand the path that I took to heal. And
Mm-hmm.
that path involves me going backwards in my life to understand where all of the underlying things happened and what led me to be who I was on May 5th of 2005 when I decided to take my own life. And the story really starts on May 6th, which is the day after when I ultimately attempted to die by suicide. And basically the background and what I was living at the time. I am a public speaker. I talk a lot about this. Essentially, I start out most of my discussions with, on May 5th of 2005, I had everything. All right. I was the CEO of a company. I have a beautiful wife and three amazing children, and we have a big house, and we vacation all over the world. And I have accomplished more in my life than most people can even dream of. And at the same time, I was suffering from a very, very bad bout of depression,
Mm-hmm.
which I had experienced for decades prior. In fact, the first memory I have of the first real depression I experienced, I was 12. So I've been carrying this around for a very long time. And so suicide attempt, wound up in a mental health facility. You mentioned Silver Hill. It happens to be 40 miles down the road from where I live. And we were lucky enough to get a bed there, and I spent some time there, really learning how to rest and then build myself back. And in my journey to heal and come out of that, right, all of the therapy that I experienced and the things that I wanted to learn about myself and about life and how to really manage my anxiety and my depression, I read a lot of books. I read a lot of self-help books, all the best authors that exist, and they were all helpful in some way, some more than others, but nobody spoke in my language. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why ultimately when I started to get control over my life years later, I had started to tell my story publicly, and people urged me to write a book. And so I did write the book. And the reason I wrote the book, again, start the conversation, but also it's in plain language. I'm just a regular guy. I grew up on Long Island. I speak very gruffly. I use a lot of foul language. And that's the story that I wanted to resonate with people. And I'm just a regular guy, Eckhart Tolle, who was somebody who I've read quite extensively, is a phenomenal human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a prophet. He has an amazing way of about going about this whole thing, but he's as gentle as can be, and he's not who I am. And so I really wanted to tell the story in my own language, and that's essentially what I did.
You did. And that makes sense. My son really likes Eckhart Tolle. I think did you read The Artist Way?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
reading that right now. I find that extremely helpful in our spiritual creativity and just life in general. I'm only on chapter 6, but it's really powerful. I saw your name, her name in the back of your book of different
Yeah.
books that you read. So
Yeah, so and I've used her workbook to go through some of the daily practices. This is many years ago, but to go through some of the daily practices to build some discipline around the artist's way.
mhm.
I think it's pretty incredible work.
Yeah, writing 3 pages a day and having an artist
Yeah,
date and all that stuff.
yeah,
She asks some hard questions, so sometimes I'll put it away and just do my daily pages and then go back to it and just halfway do it, and then I figure I'll go back in 5 years and do it again.
yeah,
But yeah, I was so touched by. I love that you write like you talk, and I was so touched by when you're so honest about your feelings, and then you're like driving down the 95, I think,
hmm
95 freeway, and you said if my wife picks up, I'll talk to her. If she doesn't, I'm going to end it. And your wife picked it up, which she normally doesn't do. So that was kind of the
yeah,
first miracle. And then your sister happened to be coming from New Jersey to visit you, and she was behind
yeah,
you by a couple minutes.
yeah,
That was a total miracle. So I was so touched by that, and so many of the things that you mentioned that made so much sense to me that I'd never heard before. And I've read so many self-help books too, but
mm,
like putting on the taking off the suits that you
yeah,
had, and then the termites, talking about the termites in the house, and even if there's one, you have to get rid of them. But there's just so many things that I learned from you. I haven't finished the book yet because I'm on the visualization page,
mm,
and I didn't want to rush it. I did a heart, but I made it way too big, so the right side wouldn't fit. So I said, okay, I'm going to do it tomorrow. So I'm excited to finish the rest of it because you don't just tell your story, but you also you're teaching us what you've learned and how we can use it in our life now to help ourselves and understand each other, understand other people.
yeah. You're right, and it's part memoir, right? Because the stories are somewhat interesting. The reason why I tell the stories about my history is so that to help people understand that going backwards is a really good a way to heal. And it's a way to get at what is causing what is happening today. And the things that happened 40, 50 years ago are the reason why I am who I am today. And so I wanted people to take that journey. And then the second part of the book is really more about a roadmap of how
Mhm.
to heal. And I talk about my roadmap to health, my roadmap to connection all the time. And those are the practices ultimately that I do pretty regularly in order to manage my ongoing anxiety and depression, because those things don't go away.
Right.
They never go away. They're very treatable, but you have to be vigilant in order for them not to continue to repeat in really deep ways.
Right. And understand the signs. Because I think you said
Yeah.
if you ever start isolating, then
Mm.
your wife's like, okay, because isolation is part of it. And then it just makes
Yeah.
it worse and spirals. So, yeah, I think there's so much that you have to offer. And I was hoping you would do an audio book because I think hearing your voice
Mm.
would be really helpful. Because most of the time nowadays, kids don't read; they just listen to audio.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited for that to come out if you decide to do that fully.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I've done 2 chapters and I need to keep going. Problem is I have a day job and that kind of gets in the way of
Oh,
some of the things that I really want to do.
right. I
But I
understand.
am in the process of shifting more focus over to my speaking work, which dovetails in with the book. So I'm hoping to have my audiobook done by the end of the year. And then however long it takes us to get it produced and put together, which shouldn't be long, but I'm hoping January, February, it'll be ready to go.
That'd be great. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I was also thinking we need more friends like your friend that took you to Silver Hill.
Yeah.
And I thought about it like a guy knowing each other and then just saying, hey, what's going on in your head right now? Or like, how do you feel inside? And that's so touching because, and even like you connected with a friend that you hadn't seen for a long time and you never knew each other really. And
Yeah.
so this is such an honest way of reaching out to people by your book. Because even me, I'm a stranger and I feel like you're my friend. And
That's
so,
awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome.
I also liked the Serenity Prayer. Oh, and when you were at the center, they were doing the arts and crafts, and you're like, if they
Yeah.
have the hard macaroni and we have to do something with that, I'm going to gouge my eyes out or something. It just cracked me up. And then you ended up loving it, and you didn't want to stop.
Right.
So I was
Exactly.
thinking maybe for one of my podcasts, I'll get people together and we can just do crafts and talk.
Yeah.
Because isn't that fun? Like
Yeah.
I like to color with my mom and my sisters, just color and talk and have coffee,
Yeah, I love that. And we
Yeah.
do that here. I mean, it's the simple things that bring people together. It really is. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned friends and having support group. It's amazing when I was sick, when I got sick, when I experienced what I experienced, came out the other side of that and decided to be really honest about it. And it's interesting to watch the people that leave your life when honesty confronts them. And for whatever reason, people that aren't supposed to be there and maybe they're toxic and maybe I was too toxic, they sort of leave. They just leave your experience. But then what's really interesting is because you're a magnet, right? You're drawing things to yourself and what you're putting out there and you become positive and non-toxic, then positive and non-toxic people start to gravitate toward you.
Right.
And so I now have many friends. My circle of tight friends is very, very small, but I work with a lot of people. I connect with people in a completely different way than I ever did before. And I meet people where they are. My goal isn't for anybody never to feel uncomfortable, but once you start to have conversations with people about, hey, how you feeling? What's going on? I don't want to talk about football. I don't want to talk about sports. I want to talk about what's going on in your life. If you're comfortable with it, those relationships become so tightly connected in such a different way. There's a really a level of mutual respect that I think we're missing in many areas of our lives. And it's especially true of men. I'm a high school lacrosse coach. I've been an athlete my entire life. I'm old now, but
You're not
I
old.
still live in that world. But, boys learn at a very early age about being unemotional and being tough and being hard and living in this space of sort of violence and aggression. And you can have it both ways. I coach high school kids. I know that they thrive on connecting in a real way because they're dealing with so many outside influences. And yes, you're on the field, you want to compete, you want to be aggressive, you want to be the best. That's all great. But when you walk across the line and you step off the field, right, you want to have a connected relationship with people. And I think you can have both. I really do. We just don't talk about it enough.
That's true. Yeah, one thing I like about football players, I went to a Rams game and beforehand they were like praying and they were all huddled together. They were brothers, I could tell. And the next thing you know, they're like trying to kill each other. No,
Yeah, exactly.
But that's just part of it. But yeah, I think men really, I think there's such a huge need for men to have connections with each other. Sometimes you didn't have healthy parents or healthy influences, and you need that coach. A lot of times coaches can be good, sometimes they're not. But men definitely need that connection with each other. And I think it's kind of hard to find.
It is. It's very hard to find. And it's also it can make people uncomfortable. So you have to be really conscious and aware of what is acceptable and what you can do and what you can't do. And in some cases, people will gravitate to you, and in other cases they won't, and that's fine. But I've coached thousands of kids, and I still have so many guys that they're out of high school now and they're in college or they're out of college, and they still come back to me and they just want to chat. I live in a small town. Guys text me all the time, hey, coach, can you meet me for a cup of coffee? And that really is just a continuation of the connection, but it also is an outlet for them because they don't have the ability to do that with other people in their lives.
Right.
And I think that's really important.
It is. And we'd be surprised. I mean, people seem like they're so together, like some of the people you mentioned in the book, and then you start hearing their story and it's like, wow, how are you even surviving that? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's really good to connect and just give people that, your present time and listen to them.
Yeah, and
And
that is the key word right there is
mhm,
listen. I have so many people. So I've gone viral on TikTok a bit, and you mentioned your daughter saw me
yeah,
on TikTok, and there's an amazing mental health support community on TikTok, and it really is incredible. But I have so many people contact me and say, how do I talk to my brother about depression?
right.
Or they're somebody who's depressed and they're afraid to reach out to people in their lives. And my response is usually setting up a structure of listening to hear, not to respond. And
Hmm.
we don't learn that skill. We don't learn the skill of listening without judgment, without response, without trying to solve, without trying to one up.
Hmm.
And these are all things that shut people down who have depression. In my worst depression, the worst thing you could have said to me is, hey, just be happy. Or,
Oh,
well, why are you depressed? Your life is great. Or
hmm,
so and so down the street has real problems, right?
hmm.
It's about being seen and being heard. And that is one of the most important skills I think that I try to teach. I run a couple of businesses and I work with a bunch of really high-powered executives and people that are making a lot of money and type A individuals. And they're generally trained to try to solve problems. Taking a step back and just being there to listen is a skill that requires a tremendous amount of work and effort.
Hmm.
Once you get there, though, it opens up the connection in those relationships in a way that you've never thought possible.
Definitely. Yes, I agree with that. You told me um, the reason you named your book "The Coffee's in the Fridge." Do you want to explain to us, everybody here, why you named it
Yes,
that?
and
Okay.
I would love to. There's coffee in the fridge is a metaphor, and it's become sort of the signature topic or structure around my speaking engagements. And it basically is this. So I came out of the hospital. I spent a couple of years really getting myself back to health and learning more about who I was. And we sold our business and we were basically getting down to our last dollar. And my wife said, look, we have to make a decision. You either need to go back to work or we need to downsize and decide what we're going to do in our lives. And those are all conscious decisions that take time, and we processed that. And I decided to go back to work. And I had my first business trip coming up, and it was my first trip in probably 3 or 4 years.
Oh, that's a long time.
And
Yeah.
so I was jumping back into a life that I had experienced in a fairly negative way. And so I was very anxious. And I said to Chris, my wife, the night before my trip, hey, listen, I got an early flight. I'm going to get up very early and I put some coffee in the fridge. I'm just going to grab that and I'm going to go to the airport. And I've always been an early bird. Chris has always been a night owl and a
Hmm.
late sleeper. And so I just figured I'd get up and go. So I get up 4 o'clock in the morning. I tiptoe around the bed to give her a kiss on the cheek so I can get in the shower and head to the airport. And she turned wide awake and said, there's coffee in the fridge. And it just, we both laughed and we cried. And it was her
Mm,
saying, hey, I see you. I love you. You're going to be fine. And
I love
so
that.
for me, what that has become is these small moments in life, right? That interaction was a nanosecond,
Hmm.
but it was the most important thing that had happened to me in months
Hmm.
because it was just such a way for somebody to say, I see you. And
Hmm.
so I now use this as a metaphor for all these small things, the small magical moments in life that if you're present and you're connected, that you see it and you experience it. And you're like, wow, these little micro magical things are what life is about. It's not about all these big goals that we're all chasing.
Right.
Yeah, it's nice to have great goals and experience positive big things, right?
Hmm.
But in every day, there's probably 50 events that can put a smile on your face. And so that's what I'm focused on. And for me, as somebody that suffers from anxiety, to be able to point to something like that in the day is great,
Yes.
you know? And that to me is what There's Coffee in the Fridge is all about. And so that's why we use that as the title.
It's so cute. I love that. I wish you could
Awesome.
make
Thanks.
a movie about your life and you could see her like waking up, there's coffee in the fridge. It's like,
Yeah.
you could always
Yeah.
do that. The movie would be great too. I think
It
your
would be
life would be a
fun.
great movie.
It would. I
Um,
agree.
so you mentioned uh, sometimes you have a therapist doesn't quite work out. I mean, you kind of reach the end of what this therapist can teach you, and it's good to get somebody that you can really connect with. I think that's important. You mentioned that in the book.
Yeah, I think that people are afraid, right?
Hmm.
They're coming into the experience of therapy already feeling defensive and not enthusiastic in some cases. And now you're sitting across the room from someone, or you're on a Zoom call with someone, and you're not connecting. Their personality isn't what you would want to engage with. And I think people don't realize that you can change. And
Right.
you can change. You can find another therapist. You can talk to a man, talk to a woman. There are alternatives, and it's okay to go and try somebody else on, so to speak. I talk about it like buying a pair of shoes, right? You put on a pair of shoes that don't fit, you're not going to buy them. So you try on a different pair of shoes.
Hmm.
And I realize that this healthcare system, especially around mental health, is really hard to navigate.
Yeah.
And that just adds another level of complexity. But there's so many more options today than there were when I went through this. And it's okay to try another person. And I actually think it's really important to get a different perspective. So I've been working with the same therapist now for, oh my gosh, probably 18 years.
Oh, that's a long
And
time. Yeah.
that is just an amazing experience, right? I've been very fortunate that it worked out the way that it did. But this is a person that's very dynamic, and she changes her approach and her modalities based on the individuals that she's working with, which I think a lot of therapists do. But the first therapist I had didn't work out. We
Hmm.
worked together for about 6 to 8 months, and he was a great guy, and I liked him a lot. I had a lot of respect for him, but he took me as far as he could take me.
Right. Yeah.
And ultimately we mutually agreed that we were at the end of our road together. And I think that's a rare event. My sister is a therapist. My sister Monique, who was on the road behind me and on that day, is a therapist. And she experiences this where people come in and even from a therapist's perspective, she can see something that doesn't fit
Right.
or may not be the right individual to connect with. So I think it's a mutual agreement between the therapist and the patient that this needs to be on the table, and people need to realize that it's okay to switch.
Right.
Now, I will say that there were moments in my therapy early on with the therapist that I've been working with for 16 years that I didn't want to go back.
Hmm.
And it wasn't because she and I weren't the right fit, but it was because the work was too difficult and I didn't want to experience it, right?
I
They
get
they
that.
call that kill the therapist. That's not a good reason to switch, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
That's a
will say
reason, but
that
not a
that
good
that is
reason.
not a good reason to switch.
um, let's see. Oh, I read this morning your letter to Ashley.
Hmm.
I found that very touching. And gal, if I could have got something like that from my dad, that would have meant a whole lot.
Hmm.
Um, but you mentioned in there that you had gone running because you wanted to do the marathon. You were going to thinking about doing the marathon with her. You'd already done it twice before, but that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then I think you were by a bridge and you said, you just thank God for, do you remember what you said there? It's like, I think you just
I
felt,
was I don't exactly remember. I could look it up, but I can tell you what I do remember. So I was in the town of Middlebury in Vermont, and there's a bridge, and it was icy, and I remember if that had been several years earlier, I would have wanted to jump off that bridge.
right. Mm-hmm.
And Now, at that point in time, I was so grateful to have that contrasting perspective. And I felt so blessed that I was able to actually see it for what it was. And then to be on a trip with my daughter in that place, while she was there to play lacrosse, um, was it was a gift. But if I wasn't present in that moment, I would have missed it. But yeah, standing on that bridge was it was a very reflective moment because I had stood on many bridges before that where I had wanted to jump.
Mm-hmm. And I think you said something about you thought you had forgiven yourself, but you realized you hadn't totally forgiven. I don't know
Yeah,
if it,
you're right. I was
yeah,
still carrying a fair
yeah,
amount of guilt and shame about it. And my daughter, Ashley, and the reason why that letter is so important and why it's in the book, she was 12 at the time that I was in the hospital. She knew very well what was going on. And so, there's a strong fear of abandonment that comes along with something like that, especially for a child.
mm-hmm,
But she was aware of everything that was happening. It took a long time for us to reconnect, and for her to trust that I was reliable. Because I had this family and had given them this life that was really not something that I wanted to live, and so it rocked them to the core. It
sure.
created a tremendous amount of fear, and it was a traumatic experience. So we had to work back and rebuild all of those connections. So that's a pretty big part of the book.
Yes. I really liked that. And I liked it how you gave them a chance to really communicate how they felt in a safe way and took it and thought about it more and talked to them more about it. So I think it's really important because a lot of times you just don't talk about it. It's like I'm okay now.
Yeah,
Everything's fine. Sorry about it, but I think it is good to go back. And even reading your book, it made me kind of look back at some of my stuff that I've stuffed way down there. It's like, wow,
mm,
I don't really want to bring that up, but I think it's probably important to really love yourself through everything, all the
yeah,
ugly things that might have
yeah.
happened, you know?
Yeah, and accept you for who you are. And
Right,
that's the start of the chain of forgiveness that needs to happen. And I don't think that and I know that men don't spend enough time doing this. I mean, I think all people don't spend enough time doing this, but especially men,
right,
because it's in the past. Let's move on. But for me, I was curious really to understand how to stop this from happening, not just for me, but for my family, for my kids. We are a product of the people that came before us. And
hmm,
so my parents were both abused as children. They lived in very traumatic and
hmm,
and crazy households.
yeah,
And I wanted to end that cycle. I really did. And that was really part of the motivation for my wanting to take myself out of the world, was because I didn't want to pass this on. What I didn't realize that leaving at that moment would not have prevented it from being passed on. It would have been passed on,
right,
right? So the
yeah,
only way to break through that was to break through and then heal it. And having these conversations is uncomfortable, but it's better than the alternative.
definitely, definitely. So I learned so much from your book. I'm sure so many other people will. And then when you get your audio out and your movie, or a series, a TV series, a continual TV series. Um, So I wrote a few things down here. I think I covered them. Is there anything else you would like to mention? I didn't finish the very end of your book, which is right here. I just love it. You did a great job on the book. And I have my friend Rebecca gave me these cardinal stickers. So I put
Oh,
the
that's
cardinal
cool.
I put the cardinal stickers wherever I want to remember things. And so I kind of went through everything. And then this morning, when I was going through my notes and typing things out, a big spider came down. This huge spider came down. I don't know if it went up or down, but it scared the crap out of me. It wasn't like a daddy long leg that you could just kill. It was like a
Yeah.
scary one. So I took off and I'm like, I've got to go spell check this. So I went back in. I think it hid behind my computer. And then I looked up on Chat GPT. What does it mean when you see a big spider when you're talking about somebody's life on a podcast? And they said sometimes a spider teaches you patience because they weave their web, and it takes a long time to do that. And I was like, well, that's a way to look at it. Patience. And I was
Yeah.
running late. I was so into looking at everything that it was getting late and I had to get going. So maybe that was part of it. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm right here in the book. But I did a lot of highlighting, and you have a lot of words that I didn't know, so I had to look up some of the words.
That's great.
But yeah, it was just so fun. I read it this far in about 2 days.
Wow,
And then
that's impressive.
I read it all day yesterday, and I was just like, it's really, I think it's super helpful, and I'm so thankful to you for helping people out with your story. And I think everything that I've learned while I've been on the podcast, everybody has a story, sometimes incredible stories like yours, but you always want to turn it around and help people at the end. That's pretty much how life is. You go through things, and then at the end, you want to help people that went through what you went through. And the way statistics are looking, it's a lot of people are going through what you're going through, and they don't talk about it, and they have nowhere to go.
Yeah, it is. And it's getting worse because of social media. And I think, technology is great, and I use it in my own life, and I leverage it for a lot of things. But if I were a teenager right now trying to navigate the noise coming at me from the world of social media, I would definitely not have survived. And I think now more than ever, people need an outlet to really connect with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The two things that I'll mention, well, first of all, the cover art on the book is my son,
Oh,
my son's
really?
art.
All
Yeah,
right.
he's a professional artist. He works in the video game world. He lives in Sweden, so
In
he
Sweden.
painted that.
Is his name
Yeah,
James?
his name is
Oh,
James.
so he
Yeah,
was named after
he's
you.
James Rinere. James
Mm-hmm.
Rinere art. He's a really
Beautiful job.
hardworking, talented artist. It's pretty impressive. So yeah,
Yeah.
he painted the cover, and that's me on the beach in our town.
Oh,
So
I love that. It's really special.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the second thing is later on in the book. So one of the concepts that I had when I wrote the book was to include some of the things that I use for my meditation and some of my mindfulness practice. And I use music a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when I teach meditation to people in workshops, I generally introduce music as a path to follow for your mind so that you don't get too distracted, but it also helps people to calm down and to shut down a little bit. So I had lyrics woven throughout the book that were important to me,
Mm-hmm.
but the lawyers at the publishing company said you can't do that. So I included it later on in the book. There's a breakdown for each chapter of the music that I think is important for that particular chapter.
Yeah, I checked that out. Yeah, I saw
But the
that.
main reason why I'm bringing it up is I think that it's a really easy way to introduce people to meditation. And meditating, and I call it speeding down. I mean, slowing down to speed up. People get concerned they can't shut their brains off, and you can't. Your brain's a computer. If you shut it off, you're dead. So I use music as a way for people to follow the path, and they're astonished that, oh, I didn't realize you could use music for that. And so I think music is a really important meditation aid.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people say, well, what can I do to get started with my journey to peace? And that is one of the first things that I'll say is, learn how to meditate, practice.
Mm-hmm.
Pick out your favorite song, 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, whatever, put it on, listen to it, and just don't do anything else. And your brain can go wherever it wants to go, but sort of live in that song for those 3.5 minutes. And then that practice becomes more natural. And later on, you can eliminate music if you want to. But I do think that's an important practice.
I think I've heard of something. There's music therapy. If people do music therapy, I've heard of it, but I don't know if there's a lot of it available around, but I think that would be good. I also saw on Instagram yesterday on the Matthew Perry Foundation, you can take the song, for example, from Friends or a song, and then with the sound waves, you can actually make a picture.
That's cool.
And it's a really cool, I can text it to you later. It's a really cool picture. And my son is a musician. So I was saying, you should, do that with the sound waves. There's an app you can do it with your song. You can turn it into a beautiful painting.
Wow.
And so it's all connected. The music, the art, your soul, your feelings, it's all connected. And it comes out in creativity in a lot of ways too, and meditation and prayer. And so there's so many things to learn and so many things that can be so much more positive than a lot of the stuff that's being fed to us throughout the day. I mean,
Yes.
pretty much everything we see is bad news and we
Yeah.
hear is bad news. So if we can be a light in some way for others and help them understand, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And it really all starts with self-connection, and then you can go from there. Because once you're connected to yourself and once you know how you want to be in life, then the rest of it will take care of itself.
That's right. Yes. So, do you have any sayings or anything? That's usually what I ask people. I didn't ask you this, but I usually say, what would you say to your 8-year-old self? Especially if you're going through a hard time, what would you say?
The first thing that came to mind is I would say to my 8-year-old self, run.
Oh,
Get
no.
the hell out of the way.
That's a good one. Run. Oh, God.
But in the
Yeah.
absence of him not being able to take care of himself independently, I think what I would say is
That's cute.
the most important thing that you could do in life, period, bar none, is to love yourself.
Yes.
And once you love yourself, then everything else will open up. And literally, that is the most important thing. The other thing that I would say that I say to people often is don't believe everything you think. I saw it on a bumper sticker a long time ago. I know it's now the name of a book. But we spend so much time inside our own heads making
Yes.
up these stories and this white noise, and most of it's not true and never will come true.
Right.
So, and I think as an 8-year-old kid, I was living a fairly fearful existence. I was a great athlete. That's where I got all my accolades. But outside of anything that having to do with a sport, I was pretty afraid most of the time. And so I think holding that kid and saying, love yourself would have been the best advice that I could have given him.
I love that. Very good. Do you have any sayings that your mother or grandmother or teacher, anything that stuck with you? Is there any type of phrase or even a song that helped you?
Yeah, nothing that really jumps out. No. I wouldn't say that look, I don't say that my upbringing was misery, because it really wasn't. But there were these experiences that created a deep trauma. And so a lot of my memory is gone. The things that are in the book are things that I worked on for a long time to get back. And a lot of other pieces of my memory have not been pieced together. And I am working on another book, and it is going to be part of my history. And so some of that is starting to come back to me. But I don't really have a lot of I don't really have any sayings. I have a lot of movie quotes and things that we do as jokes and that are common themes throughout our family, which are great. But other than that, nothing that really jumps out.
Okay. And you have James and Ashley, and you have a daughter. What's her name?
A daughter, Lindsay.
Lindsay.
Yeah. And they were 12, 10, and 6. So my 2 daughters and my son when I went into the hospital. My oldest has a child, so I have a 2.5-year-old granddaughter, and my second daughter, Lindsay, is my wife's business partner. They own clothing boutiques here in Connecticut, and they also have a pretty big online business. And then my son's an artist, and he lives in Sweden.
Sweden. That's amazing. So I'm glad that you got to see all this happen and that you're doing so well. So what are your next steps? You're writing a book and you're still working. And after the book, you're going to do a movie. I keep saying that, but.
So you're the 4th person that I've talked with that wants me to turn this into a movie. I actually have somebody that's interested in helping me move down that path. It's not something that I thought about initially, but after getting some feedback on the book, it's possible. I don't really know that world very well, but so I am a partner in a healthcare startup business. So I do some work there. I do public speaking, so I'm a professional speaker, and
Hmm.
I talk to corporate groups, college athletes, high school athletes about self-connection and teach meditation. And like I said, I'm writing a second book. It could take years. This book took me 8 years or so
Mm.
to 10 years to write. But that's been a very cathartic process. I love to write, even if it's nothing anybody else will see. It's just really helpful for me to organize my thoughts and get my stuff and my intentions laid out. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm hoping that in 2026, I spend more time speaking than I do doing anything else.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Well, we'll see what happens there. That sounds really good.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, thank you so much for being on. I don't know if you've seen my podcast, but at the end, I always say what my mother says. You really are loved just as you are, more than you know. And thank
Oh,
you
I
for
love
being
that.
you. And so many other people are going to benefit so much from you and your story. So I really thank you for that. And thank you for being on with me, because you didn't know me from Adam and you agreed to be on. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I thank you for having me. Your daughter is clearly intelligent for getting us connected.
She is. She's a
She saw
beautiful,
something.
she's going to law school
Yeah.
in San Francisco.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that saying. Your mother's saying is beautiful. I really love it. I think that the wisdom of my parents, both of my parents, even though I had a very fraught relationship with my dad, the wisdom of their lives, the things that they said didn't hit me until much later in life.
Right.
And um, so I'm very grateful to have had that experience.
Very nice. Well, have a great rest of your day. And thank you again for being on. And hopefully you'll be on again sometime,
I
or we
love
can
it.
meet when you come to
Anytime, I
LA.
love it.
Yeah, come to LA. We'd love to get together with you.
That's great. I appreciate that very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have a good one.